There is no legal concept of hate speech. So I'm going to use the scare quotes once, and now from then on, just imagine those. Precisely because the Supreme Court has never defined a category of speech based on its hateful content and said, therefore, it is not constitutionally protected or it's less constitutionally protected. To the contrary, the Supreme Court has repeatedly enforced as the bedrock principle of freedom of speech what it calls viewpoint neutrality or content neutrality. Government must remain neutral to the viewpoint, content, message, idea of the speech, no matter how hateful it is, no matter how hated it is, no matter how generally feared it is. Government may never restrict speech solely based on the objectionable, controversial nature of its viewpoint. However,
that's political neutrality.
Yeah, it is complete political neutrality. And as I may say, it's the very same core principle that has knit together the two religion clauses in the First Amendment, the non-establishment clause and free exercise of religion, that government must remain neutral toward religion, either religion in general or any specific religion, neither favoring it nor disfavoring it. You know, it's walking a tightrope, but I think it's appropriate to demand that neutrality of our government so that we, the people, as individuals, can make those value choices for ourselves. But when you get beyond the content of the message, Doug, and you look at it in its overall context, taking into account not only the message, the viewpoint, but in what circumstances, with what intent, with what effect, these contextual factors, speech with a hateful message may often be subject to context-defined limits on speech. We already talked about one example, a hateful message that constitutes intentional incitement of imminent violence that's likely to happen imminently will be unprotected, will be punishable. I think we talked about the other example of another example, a true threat. If a hateful message is targeted at a particular individual or small group of individuals and the speaker intends to instill a reasonable fear that the audience member is going to be subject to attack, that is a punishable true threat. Fighting words is another example. Targeted harassment or bullying. So there are many, many contextually defined examples where hate speech may be punished, but not solely because of despising the idea. Since you've mentioned
it's an intent to harm, really.
Yes, yes. Since you've mentioned Virginia many times, may I talk about the Charlottesville situation in 2017? So in Charlottesville, Virginia, in 2017, the famous or infamous Unite the Right demonstrations well illustrate the distinction between speech that is protected, a hateful message that is protected because of the viewpoint neutrality principle, versus hateful speech that is not protected because of the contextual circumstances. So when the Unite the Right demonstrators were chanting, "You will not replace us, Jews will not replace us," those are hateful messages, but they cannot be suppressed solely on the basis of our objection to the viewpoint that those messages convey. However, in context, on the Friday night back there in August 2017, when the Unite the Right demonstrators were not only chanting those messages, but they were marching en masse toward the counter-demonstrators who were ringed around the statue of Thomas Jefferson on the UVA campus, brandishing lighted tiki torches at menacingly close distance to the counter-demonstrators. That constituted a punishable true threat, right? If you were a counter-demonstrator, you would reasonably fear that you were going to be subject to attack, which would have a very speech suppressive impact, not to mention, depriving you of your liberty.